Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
I'm Steve Willis, co-founder of Hope Sheds Light. On behalf of my partners and co-founders, Ron Rosetto and Arvo Prima, we welcome you to our Finding Hope for Life Recovery Support meeting. It is always a joy to see everybody in person. Thank you for being with us, and a joy to see and thank everybody on Facebook for joining us. So, Happy New Year to everyone. We're excited about it. For those of you who are new, I'll introduce Hope. Hope is a non-profit, family-focused agency. Our mission is to raise awareness and to educate individuals, families, and the community about the impact of addiction by having the courage to share our personal experiences, by offering our strength and wisdom, and by providing hope and resources that lead to the long-term recovery of the entire family. So am I sideways here?
No, you're good.
Okay,
You
good.
keep
Because that happens sometimes, by the way. What we want to do, through Hope, is to remove the fear and stigma that surrounds this disease by offering a loving and safe and hopeful environment that leads to the healing of families and the well-being of the community. Okay, and we do that in part by this Finding Hope meeting. This meeting at the beautiful Holy Cross Lutheran Church meets on the second and fourth Tuesday of every month, so welcome. The first and third Tuesdays of every month we have a Finding Recovery for Life support meeting in our Hope office. That's at 253 Chestnut Street in Toms River. That's a little different format from this. That's a group learning format. We're together and we introduce topics of recovery. The hope is that it leads to better recovery practices within the family. We have a grief meeting. For those of you like me who may have lost a loved one to addiction, that meeting meets on every Thursday night from 6 to 7 in our Hope office. It's a powerful meeting and we welcome you. All of these meetings, the opportunities to share, are open to anyone that's impacted by this disease. Our prayer is that by us sharing with you and you with us, you'll have the courage to change the way you think and feel about addiction and in turn become healthy. The way this meeting works, the first part of this is an educational piece. We are blessed with talented colleagues in this field to offer their thoughts on prevention, treatment, and recovery. We break out into groups after that to discuss what we've heard, to discuss the impact of addiction and substance misuse, how it affects us. And importantly, we talk about ways in which we can get healthier, ways in which we can take care of ourselves as we travel down our own individual paths to recovery. So again, we thank you for joining us. It's our joy to share. Our speaker tonight, I'm excited to introduce, he is my partner in hope. He is talking about, you wrote it down for me, new beginnings, right? I got that. Excuse me. Rebuilding families and relationships. I love him very much. His name is Arvo Prima. Please welcome him.
You want me to come closer? Welcome, everybody. So the topic tonight, new beginnings, rebuilding families and relationships. When Heather asked me to share on a topic, I had to think about it before I agreed. I'm not a big fan of public speaking, and to be clear, I'm not an expert in the field of recovery, but I was raised in a home where my mom struggled with alcohol, and later in my adult life, one of my children also struggled with addiction for a long time, who we eventually lost to the disease. So tonight, this is my story, and by me sharing it with you tonight, maybe something may resonate with you and maybe be helpful. At least that's my hope. I think the best part of my story is today. That through it all, I still feel blessed. And sometimes it's hard to say it out loud because it seems crazy, almost impossible. How can somebody who's been around addiction for over 45 years, which by its nature instills fear, shame, isolation, and guilt, and have also lost a son to the disease, feel joy? One word: change. If I didn't work on change, I would have lost way more than just my son. For sure, my marriage, my other children, my business, were all a mess. Not to mention my mental and physical health. I write this stuff down because I want to stay on point. You think I would know it, I lived it. The disease of addiction impacts everybody who cares about the person suffering. And the closer you are, the stronger the pain. I decided to make a list of everything that I have learned during my journey towards change, which for me I call my recovery. I had to surrender and to understand I can't do it alone. Then I had to find the courage to walk into the rooms of recovery, find a sponsor, listen and trust the professionals who supported me and still do today. It's really important to remember I am sharing my experiences, strength, and hope. In the recovery rooms, we say, take what you like and leave the rest. There's no right or wrong, only what works for you. So here we go. So the first thing I thought about when I was thinking about what I was going to say tonight is recovery is an action word. Change happens with letting go of something we're comfortable with and trying something new. For me, with a big ego, basically a builder by nature, I work harder at something, I can fix it. That's not how it worked with the disease of addiction. It was different when my mom was sick because I was a kid. I didn't feel as responsible, but when my son got sick, it was unbelievable. So I knew I had to do something. The second thing I wrote was, through pain, people seek change. And I wrote that because the only reason that I wanted to change was because it was so hard staying where I was. So the pain of being who I was greater than the change that I was afraid to seek. The third thing I wrote, which I still relate to today, is people that don't have addiction in their lives may not be the best resource for us to seek advice. The people who do not have addiction in their lives may not be the best resource for us to seek advice unless they're professionals in the field. Because when it first happened in my life, I didn't know what it was. I didn't know how to deal with it. And sharing some of the craziness that addiction brings into your life, people that don't have it in their lives or see it every day, it's very difficult for them to help you. I'm sure it was done with love, and you know the advice that was given was meant to be helpful, but it didn't really help me. The other thing I wrote, the next thing I wrote was addiction is a disease, and my qualifiers don't want to be that way. So this took some time. Had to get through the emotions of anger and all the other emotions that I was feeling, but to finally accept it that it's a disease and my son didn't want to be that way helped me have a little grace towards him and for me. The 3 C's. I didn't cause it, I can't control it, and I certainly can't cure it. Mm-hmm. That was, I spent a lot of time on that one. Could have been a few years, I'm not sure. And as I learned more and grew more, I learned that I could love the qualifier and hate the disease. That let me separate the person from the disease and love the person again, and still hate the disease, where I just hated the whole thing. The rooms of recovery saved my life and continue today. I believe God speaks through people. When I go into the rooms of recovery, regardless of if I've been away a month or 2 months or whatever, the people in that room, those rooms, are like me. And I feel comfortable sharing there, and I always hear something that I need to hear when I go that day. I also believe the rooms of recovery could have saved my son's life. And I learned this by attending the open meetings for them. I witnessed the love and support recovery people have for each other. And the only request they have is the willingness to change. There's a meeting in Bayhead. It's called Lost and Found. And when I first started my journey in recovery, I would go to the parents group in Bayhead, and then somebody had suggested the Lost and Found meeting in Bayhead. And I remember I would walk in there, and it was like 150 people. There's the greeters and the people that do the coffee and the setup. And everybody in that room was in recovery, but we were allowed to go in as family members. And I would sit in the back row, and they would always have 3 people sharing, which I really thought was cool. So, if one story wasn't great, the second story was better, the third story, whatever. But what amazes me the most was the stories were heartfelt and real. And when they closed the speaking part of the meeting, they would say, "Who's here for the first time?" And you'd see 1 or 2 people walk up. Who's got 30 days? Who's got 6 months? Who's got blah, 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 all the way up to like 30 years. And I was so blown away that this group of people who don't know each other maybe for just that meeting, bring up a brand new person in recovery and surround them with love. The jobs were given to them, rides were given to them, money if they needed was given to them. If I didn't see that myself, the part of the family program that taught me to let go and let God and all that, like, I heard it, but I didn't trust it. And when I saw that, I believed it. And today I still believe it. It's amazing. The 12 steps to recovery are a way of living in every aspect of my life. The reason I wrote this was because I went through this journey. I learned this new way of dealing with the disease of addiction, but what I found was it helps me deal with everything that I live with today. So it's like, for me, a way of living. This is kind of funny. What you think about me is none of my business. This took a while to get to because we live with such shame and guilt, and we're always so worried about what everybody thinks about us. And none of it's true. It's really not true at all, but I had to get to the point where I just needed to worry about what I was doing and learn about this disease and do it the right way. Because the next thing I wrote was, I'm responsible for keeping my side of the street clean, not yours. So again, I'm kind of owning it. I'm making the changes that I need to. And sometimes being a codependent, when you change and you stop being codependent, people become angry with you because they think there's something wrong. Because you've acted a certain way your whole life and now all of a sudden you're not acting that way. So I kind of had to work through that. I wrote control is an illusion. I learned that to be true. I learned boundaries are for me and are necessary for keeping my feelings clear and keeping me safe. When somebody first talked to me about boundaries, I thought they were mean. I don't understand them. What do I need boundaries for? But I learned that they're really important for me, even today, even with people that I work for, my family members. I need to be honest and I need to be clear and I need to do something to keep me safe. I wrote, the idea my qualifiers need me to find and keep recovery was false. This was a hard one. Because again, this is, a father who believes that he's supposed to keep his mom better and his son safe. And without me, they can't do it. I found that not to be true for me. I also learned that recovery is an inside job. It can't be purchased, forced, or given to someone else. It has to be earned. We are only as sick as our secrets. I had to be honest with myself. Nothing changes if nothing changes. Insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. That right there probably was 3 years. At least 3 years. Same thing over and over and over and over. For whatever reason, I would spin it. It would make sense, I would do it. I would spin it, it makes sense and do it. The result would be the same, and I would do it again. Anyway, that's just me. By feeling the natural negative consequences of my action made me change. I followed the one before by this because doing the same thing over, getting a negative response and a consequence, at least enough times for me to say, maybe that's just something I should not do anymore, and eventually I got there. I also learned my feelings aren't facts. Just because I feel something doesn't make it true. So I was an emotional mess. So I was just nothing but feeling. There wasn't even anything that was true in my life. So something would happen, I would react. Something would happen, I would react. And half of it was bullshit. Some of it I made up. Some of it I lied to myself for. You know, like, it was just a mess. So today I know that to be true, not to be true, so I kind of be careful. I followed that one with fear-based decisions are never helpful. I have a 24-hour rule. Again, with addiction in your family, there's always an emergency, then there's an action, and then there's fear and all this stuff. I learned over time with the support of everybody that I could pause, do the 24-hour rule. How important is it? It helped me. 20. As a married couple, we needed to come together and speak as one voice. I can tell you without a question, this saved my marriage. My wife's strength helped me with mine, and we also included our children in our decisions. And when I wrote this, I don't know what day I wrote it, but I thought about that. And you know, going through this journey for over 10 years and going through it as a son of a mom, when my son decided to do whatever he was doing and the result eventually took his life, if I didn't come together with my wife in helping us make decisions and to deal with the loss of our son, if we were both on different sides of this craziness, without question it would have impacted my marriage. And I can promise you the two children that are with us today, Pablo's brother and sister, we all were at the end together when we were talking about some of these decisions, and they were so difficult to make. And with addiction, you know, you either stop, you get institutionalized, or you die. There's not a lot of C, D, E, F, G kind of things. So try to, if you can, to be united. I could not recover myself. I needed people to show me what recovery looked like, felt like, and provide the strength and support needed to make the hard decisions. Recovery takes time. It's not comfortable. It's not a comfortable place to be. Being vulnerable, which is what we talked about last week. Being vulnerable sucks. It just sucks. It just does. But you don't have to be vulnerable by yourself. You can be surrounded by people that support and understand and love you. It makes it a little bit easier. This one was a real good one to kind of learn. I have the permission to be happy even if my qualifier does not find recovery. And when I heard that, I don't know, 6 years ago, the person that shared it with me, Rob, who comes to our meetings, I didn't talk to him for like a month. I'm like, that is the most ridiculous thing I ever heard. I mean, and then, you know, you hear you're only going to be as happy as your sickest kid, and I'm like, I am so screwed. You know, like, so like I'm, for the rest of my life, I'm screwed, right? Like, so you come to, you know, and that's what happens in the rooms. Like, you'll walk in and somebody will say something and it will just poke a nerve, it will pull something, and you'll be so pissed. So pissed. You're like, I'm never going back there. They're stupid. They're ridiculous. How could they say stuff like that? And then when you really sit on it, you're like, yeah, you know, maybe, you know, you kind of come around. So, yeah, I went back to the meeting and I finally, and I think the part that I didn't share in this was he goes, so if you're waiting for him to get better and he never gets better, what happens to you? I'm like, what are you talking about? That's not an option. That's the kind of crap they say to you. You know, and you're like, well, that's bullshit, right? And I was only going to be there for 6 months. It's like 12 years later, right? Oh my God. So there was that one. This was kind of cool. As my faith grew, so did my serenity. I had to trust my higher power, which was God. Yeah, I mean, listen. I don't know, talking to the guys out there, that's easy to do, right? Trust God is something I had to work on really hard. My son's disease helped me find the rooms of recovery, even though when I first came into the rooms, I was hoping that the people would tell me how to save him. But I soon learned it wasn't about him. It was about changing me, which really made me mad until I understood why. I could only control myself and my feelings, and saving the world was not my job. Self-care is not being selfish. Like, that whole thing there is still a work in progress for me. It really is. It's really hard to do. Outside the rooms of recovery, that's criticized as being selfish. Inside the rooms of recovery, it's a necessary thing. Because this disease isn't happy just taking our loved ones. It will take everybody and everything from us. And it still won't stop. It still won't stop. I talk to my youngest son sometimes about his brother, and I guess he has some unfinished business there, and he's still a little bit angry. And my son's been gone over 2 years. So the disease wasn't happy like the 12 years of chaos. After they take the loved one, if you don't heal from it and work through it, it still grabs you. I mean, that's so unfair. Self-care is not being selfish. And I have to read this. I can honestly tell you today I'm a better man and truly blessed for the changes of recovery that I have. It's amazing to me that I can stand up here, share this story that is so private, and feel good about it. Because somewhere out there, somebody's going to get something from it. And maybe somebody can have a better ending to their story. Finally, I have to share I miss my son. And I really do wish this story was different for me. But I accept God's plan. I really do. I can't even believe it. I know he's safe today and watching over me. And I know I'm going to see him again. And that gives me the grace to be up here with you tonight and to be honest and vulnerable. And it's just incredible. I mean, what you are, you don't have to stay, and recovery makes all things good again. I want to close. I know I talk really fast, and I told Steve he has to come in and fill the 15 minutes, but but wait, I got one thing I want to read. So this is a poem I thought was really cool. I heard on Friday in the group. It says, "Hello, welcome to Flight 2020. We are prepared to take off into the new year. Please make sure your attitude and blessings are secured and locked in the upright position. All self-destructive devices should be turned off at this time. All negativity, hurts, and discouragement should be put away. If we lose altitude under pressure during the flight, reach up and pull down a prayer. Prayers will be automatically activated by faith. Once your faith is activated, you can assist other passengers. There'll be no baggage allowed on this flight. The captain, God, your higher power, has cleared us for takeoff. Destination greatness. Happy New Year."
All right.
He rocks, doesn't he?
He killed it.
I know, he killed it.
He killed it.
You can't leave.
You want me to stay up
You gotta stay.
You guys.
Questions for this guy? Relationships and families. And this disease makes it a nightmare, doesn't it? But he's rebuilding stuff. I've been blessed to rebuild relationships too. So who has questions about that? Like, how do you do it? Right? Anybody?
I want to know how long before you lost Pop did you start going into the room?
So when Bob was 18, he got accepted to Penn State, and he was actively using, and we made a deal that if he stopped, he could go. We went there, we picked out classes. He was so happy, I was so happy. On the way home, I'm like, we're good. Like, there's no chance he's ever gonna use again, right? 3 days later, he was using. So Bob went to his first rehab before his 18th birthday. And in that rehab, it was Seabrook. They're like, listen, guys, you better go and get into the groups of recovery, because this is gonna be a life for you now. You know, what people think is, if you're an addict or an alcoholic and you find recovery, that's it. No, it's work every day. And the families have to work every day as well. Because the person that comes back is different. So if you're not different, it's not fair. So I started that, 12 years ago, kicking and screaming the whole freaking time. Still kick and scream a little, And for those of you that know Bev, my wife, she's like all in. Like she's the full Monty recovery girl, Try living with that, Like, are you taking my inventory? Are you, So she took the lead, and I'm all sick and suffering at home, and she's coming back and like a little bit happy, and I'm like, well, that's bullshit. So it got me off my ass, and it got me to go, and I did hear a couple things I liked, not much, but like 6 months later, it got better and better. And I think what you'll find in the rooms of recovery is if you're in a mood, when you go, that meeting just stinks. But if you're in a different mood and you're open, that meeting is better. And sometimes there's like 20 people in a room and you can't wait for 4 to share and you can't stand to hear 3 share, right? Like, oh God, here we go again, or I can't, like amazing. So we're just people, And the funniest thing I always hear in the rooms is like, he says the same thing all the time. I said, but that's his story. Like, I can't make up a story. Like, that's why when you facilitate too long, it's like, enough with him. Like, how many times am I going to hear the story? I'm like, all right, we'll get another guy. Like, I can't make up a freaking story, right? So the point is when all of us share, all our stories help each other. So even if you don't think you have anything to say it. Because it's amazing. It's incredible.
So I have another child too, and I lost my son, Mark, you know that. And you have 2 others.
Correct.
And the relationship with Pop was just busted because of addiction, right?
So my oldest daughter, not so much, but my youngest son, yes.
So how's that relationship now?
Well, Christian's got work to do.
Mm-hmm.
And we understand what recovery looks like, and it's his work to do, not ours.
Yeah.
So the old me would be forcing that,
Right.
Right.
You got to forgive him, you got to. And today I'm like, dude, you want to carry that, man? Bag of rocks, go ahead. Because I let my rocks go.
Yeah.
And I love Pablo today. I'm sad, I'm pissed, but, God took him home. It wasn't something I had, it wasn't my plan. It wasn't a box I checked. But I had to make peace with it. And I hope his brother does too someday, for his sake. But the one thing I can tell you is talking about it and sharing about it and feeling it together, even when it's going on and it's red hot, is super important. It's super important. And it hurts.
It does. I was blessed to have a Rob in my life years ago who asked me the same question that Rob. See, what if Mark never gets better? What are you going to do? Right? And it's such a powerful question and an important one, right? And my relationship with my daughter at that point was really broken. Like, Em was like 15 at that point, and I was sick enough and that as you've heard, I really stopped talking with her. I stopped paying attention to her. Way too focused on trying to fix Mark. She didn't do anything wrong, right? So when I started to, when I knew I needed to get well, it wasn't just about getting well so I could respond to Mark better. It was about getting well so I could save my family, right? So I could talk to my daughter again. And I just think as I heard you speak, and what I had to do really to mend the relationship with them. And it was really about me just realizing how damaged I am and how damaged I remain, right? Like I asked Emily, I said, all those years ago, I said, honey, what can I do? I finally started asking her, what can I do for you? And she said things like, Daddy would just stop hiding in bushes looking for Mark, things like that, Doing like, why don't you just stay home with me? And it was little things like that. And I said, is that gonna, will that help you? And she was blessed to say, I love you. I just want you, right? So that to me is how we build relationships back, just being present, right?
Yeah.
And
you can't do that by yourself.
well, I couldn't.
Because in your own head,
No.
you think everything you're doing is right. Because you wouldn't do it if you didn't think it was right. You're doing it out of love. I remember when I went to that first meeting in Seabrook, and he goes, you're a codependent. And I'm like, what does that mean? That I love too much? That I care too much? The world needs us, you selfish guy.
You didn't say guy.
You know? And he's like, but how you doing? And I'm like, I had no idea. I freaking no idea. Well, he's doing great, he's here. No, I didn't ask that. Like, because you don't know, you just, and it doesn't matter. Like, there isn't a parent in this room that wouldn't sell their soul to save their kid, not one. It's just how you're wired. But this disease is funky. It's not about that. So,
It's not about that. It's
Right,
all
because you
different.
can sell your soul and still,
oh yeah.
it's just.
Well, the devil's not happy with that.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh no.
That's just
That's just a
another
down
soul.
payment.
Yeah.
He wants it all. So then you learn. But the neat thing is, I think everything that we try to do is in love.
Right.
As hard as it sounds, as awful as it is, as different as it is, it's love based. Like, you know?
Mhm.
And that's why, get the mask and cover your mouth first and then help others, right? Because if you're a shit show, I mean, how do you help other people? You can two-step it.
Poorly.
Yeah, okay, I know I'm a problem, let's help somebody else and forget all about you, and, I remember going to sleep was awful. I was super productive when my son was running. I worked like 96 hours a freaking week, because bedtime was like, oh no,
Right.
here comes bedtime. And then the head goes, shh,
You couldn't sleep anyway.
couldn't sleep at all.
Right.
Yeah. So, anyway,
I got a lot better when I realized, though, that I didn't have to stop loving Mark.
yeah.
I just needed to learn how to love him in a different way. Love him in a way that wasn't damaging to me and Denise and Emily, right? And it was simply just taking, like literally, just a little step back and letting other people guide me along that healthy path. Because when you copy what works, I guess you have what they have, right?
Yeah, you keep it for a little while, and if you start to lose it, you got to get on the phone. Because the phone weighs 10,000 pounds in my house. Like, to call somebody and go, I need help. Like,
Yeah.
forget it. Like, as a guy, like for me, no way. I'm going off the cliff before I call somebody. So on the way down, you're like, hey, can you help me? Next time, So, but in our business here, we get a chance to do that a whole bunch of times. So you get another shot at it, Yeah.
That's what's fun.
Yeah, call me before you jump.
That's a safe
Okay.
So who has questions? Who wants to share? Anybody? No? That's it. Well, we're gonna break out here. Yeah, we'll let Heather finish this up. Thank you,
All right.
guys.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.